So let's circle back to where you were when you were talking about leaving Bangalore and coming back to Bombay. And that's when you started your freelance journey in earnest, right? Once you got back. How did you start to pick up work? How did work find you, or how did you go out looking for it?
So initially, when I first quit my job in 2015, and I was still in Goa, a lot of the work that I got was from the company that I just left, from Synapse itself, because I worked on projects for them for 3 years. So I knew the clients, I knew what it was like interacting with them. And they asked me to work on some of the projects that I worked for them, which was a great experience. And once I came back to India and came back to Bombay, through word of mouth mostly, some of the people who knew me from Goa reached out and asked me if I'd work on a small project for them, logo designs, and it was essentially word of mouth that got around and told people, oh, I was doing this. I was also figuring out what I wanted to do. So I was figuring out how type design can be a part of it, how I might possibly be able to do more of that in this city. And the teaching happened somewhere simultaneously. So there was lots of overlaps. It was not really a linear story. It was a mix of word of mouth across the board, actually, even with the teaching, even with the graphic design work. The type design had not really, like I had my own projects that I was working on, but I had not really thought about how I can sort of make money off that.
Okay, so now we're getting into a little bit of. I think you said something to me earlier when we spoke about a common question that students ask you about freelancing and how you stay motivated. So I think that really caught my eye and caught my ear, I should say, and I thought that's something very important. So why don't you just elaborate a little bit about that?
A lot of a really popular question is, oh, where is your motivation? What motivates you to work? And I'm like, paying the bills. That motivates me to work. I have bills to pay. I have a loan to pay off. I would like, not in pandemic times, but I would go out and eat. I'd like to travel more. I'd like to go and attend these conferences that happen. And all of this requires money. And money comes from working and meeting those deadlines and asking clients to pay you on time. All of that is the motivation I need to finish work. Some work is, what is self-motivated, but other client work sometimes it is, getting paid is a great motivation. And I don't think anyone should find that strange. I think that's a great thing to work towards.
Yeah, so my dad used to tell me something. So he is a filmmaker.
Okay.
So when he would, when I was in school or when I was in the early years of college, I used to say I'm not feeling inspired to do something, and then he used to tell me that when you're a professional, you don't wait for inspiration. You have to make it happen. Inspiration may happen along the way, but ultimately you have to be the professional and execute. You have to get it done, and it has to be consistently good.
Absolutely.
And that comes from discipline, right? So what does your day look like when you're working on a project? What does your day look like?
So my day generally it will start by 9, and it ideally gets over by around 7 in terms of working hours. But in terms of I mean that sounds like a lot of time, but it's broken up into many different ways. So because I do so many different things, part of the day might go into prepping for a class that I have to take. Part of it might be just replying to emails, which takes up a lot more time than one might imagine as a designer, or replying to or getting on a call to clarify something with the client. A lot of the time might go into researching something. As part of my type works, I will take pictures of these signs, but then I have to also read up on it. I have to figure out a story behind it, or what is the story behind it, and how to sort of tell that story. So all of that requires me to go and read tons and tons of stuff on the internet, or find books that will give me relevant information. So it's a mix of all of this. In the middle of all of this, I have to also cook so that I can feed myself. So I mean,
Yeah.
usually a working day is those many hours, but it's split into many different ways across different days. On days that I'm teaching, which is almost 3 times a week, this year has been a lot more than I normally do. On those days, if I'm teaching, that usually starts at 8 in the morning and goes on till 1 at times in the afternoon. And after that, I'm just completely drained. I cannot do anything else because I've been talking to students and clarifying doubts. And after that, I'm just I don't want to really do anything. I'm just staring at the ceiling or mindlessly watching something. So it changes from day to day, but usually it's between those hours.
And what would be the primary challenges that you would face in your work as a freelancer? But because I think this sort of thing applies to most people who would be working freelance. Similar challenges are are faced across the board.
Yeah. It's as a freelancer, it's interesting because my freelance life is across two essential roles: graphic design and type design. And while there are some aspects that overlap, they're also kind of different. So, for example, with graphic design work, I find myself that I have to follow up on payments a lot more. That tends to be something that I don't enjoy. Like, in an ideal world, I would have some sort of a manager who would take care of following up on payments, but that's something I have to do. I have to check up on them. I have to also sort of deal with this nightmare some freelancers might be aware of, called vendor registration forms, which is just really the worst kind of red tape there. So that dissuades you from ever making any money. Right up front, they expect so much. So stuff like that. But in terms of type design, one of the challenges I have is to translate what it is that I can, how is it that I can add value to the client? Because type design, graphic design is at least something that they have a sense of what to expect. They might have worked with other graphic designers, but if I'm sort of pitching a type design job, there is a lesser understanding. So there is more educating the client that's required. Educating in terms of not just what I can provide, but also what to expect. Just what I spoke about timelines earlier. With type design, you need to tell them that this won't happen fast, this will take some time, and they need to be okay with that right from the beginning. And how to sort of convey the fact that what you're doing is of value and why they should invest all this money into it. So both of these struggles are very different for graphic design. I think I'm far better at it as a freelancer for graphic design because I've done that for longer. For type design, I'm still figuring out. I'm talking to other type designers who face similar problems, and that sort of helps me become better at doing this as a freelancer.
So, and does this connect to almost like commission type design? Is that what you're talking about, or are you talking about in general itself?
As a type design freelancer, I can work in a bunch of different ways. One of the ways is that someone commissions a typeface from me. This could be an ad agency for one of their clients, or a person. Like recently, I had someone write to me asking if I would design a typeface based on their handwriting. So stuff like that is something I can offer to individuals, to clients if they have, to advertising agencies if they have a company that's their client and they've designed a logo for them and they want a matching typeface. Then I could commission, I could be asked to design a matching typeface for that logo. But I can also work as a freelancer for other type designers. So if someone's designed a set of characters and they want it extended beyond just the basic ABCD that they might have drawn, there are other symbols and numerals and other aspects to type design that I could be asked to sort of extend. I recently worked on the italic version of an upright design. So they'd already drawn the upright design and I was asked to help with extending the italic version.
Out of curiosity, how long does something like that take when you're simply doing the upright to the italic version? It sounds like a click of a button once it's on your computer, right?
Yeah.
But obviously,
so you could do it, and I know a lot of these vector softwares like Illustrator and InDesign offer you that option where you can just click and it becomes slanted. But if you would zoom into it and look at it closer, just slanting it makes the shapes look funny. The thinner bits become thinner and thicker bits become darker, and you need to optically correct them so that it works at other sizes. So yeah. So to make something, sometimes to make something look a certain way, you need to draw it differently, so it actually looks differently. An example of this might be when you have a square and a circle of the same length right next to one another. The circle will always look smaller than the square. For the circle to optically look the same size as the square, you need to make it overshoot. So the round bit at the top has to go slightly above that line that the square is forming at the top edge, and same thing for the bottom. And then it'll sort of optically look similar while the metrics are actually different. And if anything, type design is full of these squares and these round shaped letter forms, and you need to optically correct them even for the upright design. For an italics version of it, there is more complexity to it.
okay. So let me just come back to what we were talking about earlier, right? So is it harder to get commission for type design than it would be for graphic design, or is that not as? I mean, is that wrong? Basically, what I'm asking, is that not correct?
No, I would say yes. At least in my experience, it has been far more easier to get graphic design jobs than type design jobs. Part of it might also be the fact that I'm not part of a type foundry and I'm an individual. But also, I think the bigger gap is just people being educated about what is possible, or the fact that how this might be actually beneficial than them sometimes licensing a really expensive typeface and then using it for in cases where they're not allowed to use it.